What's up everybody, this is Ven, and I welcome you to the M.O.C Spotlight, where we take apart what you build. For today's episode, we'll be going over the winner of the first anniversary contest that was hosted on the TTV message board some time ago. The winner being Ekimu the First, created by the message board member helryx. Now before we kick off this review, let me review my method of reviewing, which involves a point system that is based on 3 fundamental attributes: the overall appearance of the M.O.C, the build of the M.O.C itself, and the concepts and ideas that were put into the M.O.C's creation. Each quality will mount up to 5 points, leading up to a final score that will be determined at the very end of the episode. And please remember that this is all my opinion. So what we're looking at here appears to be an overblown version of the Ekimu character that we have all become familiar with that gold and blue color scheme, some large weapon, except the thing with this guy is that of course he's bigger, he's got a different looking weapon, and he's got a different mask. Now at first glance, this M.O.C looked to me like an amalgamation of a bunch of golden CCBS parts with the golden skull spider mask placed on top like some sort of scary cherry. The color scheme is neat, but it's pretty much the same color scheme that we get in Ekimu in the Skull Grinder set, so nothing all too unfamiliar here. I do have to say that this M.O.C comes off as a bit basic, the more interesting parts being in the weapons, and even then they're not all that crazy looking. But what I really gathered from this figure is that it's tall, mostly golden and smooth looking, and he's got a scary, spooky mask. And he's got hints of blue here and there, but there isn't that many interesting features that really stick out. Nothing that really gives this M.O.C a true identity. The leg design is pretty unique. I don't see this sort of thing done all too often. And of course the weapons, those are quite unique. Kinda the same aesthetic for both of them though. And I guess that's really this M.O.C in a nutshell. It's mostly all the same aesthetic. This smooth, almost textureless creation. Quite monotonous. And that's coming from a monotonous perspective. I mean, come on, I'm not the most colorful guy around, but neither is this M.O.C, am I right? No, but see, the colors aren't the problem. It's really the aesthetic, because there's nothing that really sticks out from this M.O.C that makes me go, whoa, this looks pretty cool. No, it's fairly basic. That said though, Ekimu here has a great looking stature, but there is a bit of an odd configuration here on his torso, where it looks like his shoulders are going up past his chest, which is kind of odd. And while we're looking at proportions here, I gotta say that his torso seems a bit too short, like a bit shorter than it really should be. And same kinda goes for the arms. These aren't god-awful proportions, but they aren't necessarily the greatest either. Nothing else I can really comment on in terms of appearance, so I'm gonna move on to the build. Now, kinda like how there's a lack of interesting features on this M.O.C, there's also a pretty sweet lack of an interesting build too. Okay, now I know that may have sounded a little bit mean. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this M.O.C has a pretty nice looking stature, and I think that's all due in part to the fact that this M.O.C is almost purely based on CCBS. So everything holds up really well, good selection of parts, I'll give you that. But it's a pretty basic usage of CCBS, and there isn't really all too much for me to praise either, other than the fact that, hey, this M.O.C holds up together really well. You put the balls in the sockets properly, good on you. And I also appreciate the usage of the new gearbox system. It's nice to see that there's a function thrown in here, and I don't see the gearbox used too often in creations, so that's another big plus. I also like the added ability of storing a weapon on the creation's back. That's a neat little feature. But overall, I don't know. Feels a bit bare bones to me since it was so simplistically built. Now, I've mentioned time and time again before that simple is not a bad thing. Simplistic can be very good, sometimes. But I'm gonna go a little bit more in depth as to why this matters here in just a moment. So that's all I have to say on the build. Really not all too much. Let's move on to the concepts. Now, there's a bit of a backstory behind this M.O.C that the builder put together, involving his sort of origin to the Ekimu character in Bionicle, where Ekimu is not really a name so much as it is a title, and supposedly this title was passed on to the character that we're already familiar with in the actual story, and that this M.O.C is supposed to represent the first being that held the title as Ekimu. So basically this M.O.C is supposed to be Ekimu's ancestor. Now, that's an interesting idea, and I guess I could see that. But the bigger picture is that this creation was made for the contest, and our contest was based on a singular theme, and that theme was world building. So when it came to M.O.Cs, contestants were to build a creation accompanied by its own brief backstory that would provide some context as to how the creation would fit into Bionicle's lore and achieve the goal of world building. Or in other words, expanding onto the Bionicle lore, showing a bit more of what the world of Bionicle has to offer, whether it be in culture and civilization, or creatures and inhabitants, so on and so forth. So here's the thing when it comes to this M.O.C. We don't really get all too much of that. I mean, we get an origin story for powered masks, the skull spiders, and Ekimu, but all that basically boils down to, oh, this golden guy you're looking at right now, he's the reason why those things exist. Like, that is essentially the backstory there is for this M.O.C, is that, oh, this character created powered masks because he thought it'd be cool, he created the skull spiders because he thought it'd be cool, he mysteriously vanishes and the villagers come up with a replacement for him, aka the Ekimu that we know now. It's all this content that isn't really relevant to Bionicle as we know it now. It doesn't really tell us all too much about Okoto or its inhabitants. It's not so much world building as it is just fan fiction. And fan fiction isn't bad, but it's not what we asked for in the contest. We basically asked contestants to think outside the box and really reach out there a little bit. But this M.O.C doesn't really do that, and that's where simplicity becomes a bit of a downfall here. The M.O.C itself is too simple, and the story behind it kind of reflects that. So with all that said, the dude got his ideas out on the table, but he doesn't really have that big of a grasp over the main goal. And that's about all I have to say in that regard, so let's move on to the final scores now, shall we? In terms of appearance, I give this M.O.C a 3 out of 5. It's an okay looking M.O.C, nothing all too impressive here, but I can't really say anything's all too bad. The proportions are a little odd, but they're not the worst. But overall, I kinda thought this M.O.C looked a bit monotonous, and I feel like there's a good bit of untapped potential here. The build also receives a 3 out of 5, for more or less similar reasons. It's not a bad build, at least it stands up, you know? It's got like 2 neat little features on it, but it's just so basic. And much like the appearance, there isn't really all that much reason for me to give it a higher score. And now, as far as the concept goes, this M.O.C receives a 2 out of 5. There's practically no world building in this creation, just an explanation as for why a couple of things exist in Bionicle's lore, accompanied by a tall golden Toa with a skull spider mask on. For a game of show and tell, there's not too much to show, and not the right thing to tell either. And then that leaves us with our final score, which adds up to 8 out of 15. It's a fairly underwhelming score for a fairly underwhelming creation. The M.O.C itself is not horrible, or some kind of piece of crap by any means. It's an okay little creation, but I do have to admit that I was a bit more impressed and intrigued with some of the other entries in this contest. And above them all, I can't really see this particular one as the winner. It just doesn't really meet my expectations. But hey, again, that is just me. This M.O.C was voted the winner by several members on the message boards, and I'm sure they all had their reasons. They probably see more out of it than I do, so hey, it's whatever. Congratulations to you, helryx. Regardless of my score, you still won the contest, the first anniversary contest that we held on the message boards, and I do hope to see more out of you because I do believe that you are capable of doing a bit better. We're all human, we're all capable of it. And thank you all for watching. Be sure to rate, comment, subscribe. Check out the message boards, especially if you want me to recognize one of your LEGO creations. Post it in the LEGO creations category on our message boards at board.ttvpodcast.com. I check it out all the time. That's about all I have to plug in. So I'll see you all later.